Well, in my view, what's unserious is to ignore really the powerful evidence of a racketeering operation that involved then Vice President Biden and arguably President Biden and bribery. And there's been nothing like it in American history where a president has been so directly implicated in personal and public related criminal activity. And as the moderates, so-called moderates in the Republican Party admitting in the House, is the evidence is overwhelming. They'd be like nothing more than avoid this, but the facts are what they are. And on top of that, you have Hunter showing up and thumbing his nose at the Hill yesterday, going into what looks to be contempt of Congress. We find out from Politico he talked to his father about that. So, Hunter and Joe are joined at the hip. And in my view, Joe Biden and the White House counsel's office that's been in contact with Hunter's lawyers about, frankly, it looks like how to obstruct and divert these investigations, should be subject to questioning through this impeachment inquiry as well.
Tom Fitton is one of my heroes. He founded Judicial Watch. He is somebody whose posts and whose lawsuits and litigation I follow constantly, and he's been kind enough to join us on the Newsmax hotline. It's been a while since we talked. Tom Fitton, welcome to the Rob Carson Show, and a Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Rob. I agree with whoever was talking earlier.
Yeah, who was that guy? I don't know. I heard that voice. Yeah, I got to tell you, Tom Fitton, did you ever think you would see such legal chicanery, illegal maybe chicanery, from a Department of Justice as it appears to be happening in the United States of America right now, to go after a political candidate and protect another political candidate?
Well, yeah. I mean, they were trying to undo a president during the Trump presidency, and were trying to undo a candidate prior to that during the Obama administration as Trump was running for office. So it's perfectly consistent with their prior behavior. The Justice Department is a locus of evil when it comes to the rule of law in this country. And we have to recognize that you at this point, you can't trust the Justice Department to prosecute a jaywalker, let alone this unprecedented targeting of President Trump, while at the same time covering up the abuses and corruption of President Biden.
Now, wait a minute. I got to tell you, now, the measured intellect and legal scholar that is Tom Fitton surprises me to hear him say that our Justice Department is a, what did you call it, locust of corruption. That's pretty big.
Locust of evil, yeah.
That's pretty amazing that you would say that, but I don't believe I've heard you bring that level of derision toward the Justice Department before. Clearly, it's a lot of things are precipitating this. What are the top of the mind for you that have made you feel this way about this iteration of the Justice Department?
Well, trying to jail the political opponent of Joe Biden based on unprecedented applications of the law and abusive applications of the law. And then once they do that, trying to suppress his First Amendment rights to speak about this abuse, basically trying to get a judge to throw him in jail or find him in contempt if he complains about this in large measure. So, there's been nothing like this in American history. And on top of that, we have this administration-wide effort defended by the Justice Department to censor Americans by the millions. And, everything you don't like in government is being defended by this Justice Department.
Well, so, it is remarkable to me. And
it's a really out-of-control rogue agency when it comes to the rule of law, as we've seen in recent years. And I don't mean just Democrat administrations. I mean Republican administrations, because the Justice Department is partisan leftist, partisan Democrat, and leftist. It doesn't mean it's not run by Republicans now and again, but generally speaking, they move in the direction of advancing their own political agendas. The rule of law be danged.
Well, to me, I can't imagine what sort of death of your soul occurred that you would imprison your political enemies despite their innocence. But this is happening wholesale right now. You've got basically every person who worked in the Trump administration being attacked. Rudy Giuliani, most recently, sued to the tune of $150 million without being able to present evidence in his defense in a Washington, D.C. courtroom. You've got other members of the Trump cabinet who've been gone after and been destroyed. Peter Navarro, among others. You've got this attempt to not only, they censored speech online, including taking Donald Trump off of the major platforms. I know that the FBI and the DOJ, certainly, if you believe everything else that has been said and proven, you'd have to admit that happened. They always use a comparison to Watergate, Tom, and you are much more of a legal scholar than I will ever be. Put into perspective what Watergate is compared to what the DOJ is doing to its political enemies right now.
Oh, Nixon would never have dreamed of being able to do what this Justice Department has done against political targets. These are just purely political targets. And there's been nothing comparable in American history to what's gone on with the targeting of Trump. The left pretends that's not true, but there is nothing comparable. I mean, had Obama himself discussing whether or not to hide national security information from being incoming president based on false allegations, and they all knew they were false, and they all knew they were falling apart. And then his FBI director met with the incoming president as part of a scheme to spy on him and try to catch him in something. Nothing like that's ever happened before. And so when it comes to government corruption, Obama/Biden makes Nixon look like a piker. And, my standard line about Joe Biden, he's the most corrupt president since he was vice president.
Nice, absolutely. It has been revealed, apparently, that the J6 committee destroyed a good deal of evidence, including testimony of the head of the Secret Service at the time, and this would have benefited Donald Trump, possibly exonerated him with regard to some of these indictments against him. What do you know about that?
Well, we don't know much because the Justice Department obviously is never going to investigate this. They're not going to stretch the law to include an investigation of Congress for destroying evidence, right?
Yeah.
And so this same January 6th committee was, quote, sharing information, unquote, with the Justice Department and Fulton County, Georgia, which is also run by Democrats that they're trying to jail Trump. But we don't know what the evidence is. In the sense, was all the evidence shared, both inculpatory and exculpatory, right? The lawyers say. And so this is just another hallmark of corruption. The January 6th report, if I were running the House, I'd retract the January 6th report. I'd have the House vote to retract the January 6th report because it's compromised by the destruction of evidence, the fact that it was purely Democrat. Yeah, I know there were 2 Republicans appointed by Nancy Pelosi on it, but the Republican Party had no role in its operations. And the report should be retracted because it's not reliable and was the fruit of the poison tree. And sure enough, now the left is using the January 6th fraud report to remove Trump from the ballot. So it's perfect in that regard, right, for the left.
Yeah. The Supreme Court has a few things in front of it that could impact some of these indictments. Is there a decision that in front of the Supreme Court that could possibly end this purely political persecution of Donald Trump during an election year?
Well, there are kind of 2 issues as best I can understand it. There's an issue about whether he has immunity from being prosecuted for acts he engaged in as president of the United States. That government activity he engaged in as president he can't be charged subsequently by an enemy administration, right? His political enemies in the next administration, and so that's the big issue. And then secondarily, there's the issue of whether the law has been stretched to improperly cover the activity on January 6th in a way that federal law doesn't cover, meaning that it's not the obstruction of an official proceeding to engage in a protest or activity outside of it that's disruptive in the way that the law is being applied. And so those are the two big issues.
Do you suppose any of those
Trump's prosecution?
Okay. Let me ask you this. We had a couple of decisions that I'm dying to hear what you had to say about the Secretary of State in Maine and the Colorado Supreme Court and their flimsy arguments to get Donald Trump off the ballot. Particularly, I've got to hear what you had to say about the Secretary of State of Maine, who used YouTube videos to decide without a law degree that Trump had actually committed insurrection when an impeachment determined he had not committed an insurrection and not been charged or convicted of an insurrection. Your thoughts on that decision, Tom Fitton?
Well, I don't have a law degree, but I'm smart enough to know that what she did was wrong. And it's no worse or no better than the extremists running the Colorado Supreme Court who engaged in similar misconduct, in my view, to throw Trump off the ballot. So this was when you need to get to a political result, you usually got to bypass a lot of rules and values that we have in government processes, the fact-finding inquiry in Maine to the degree there was one, and the court process in Colorado that was upended as well, it looks like. So it's no surprise that all bets are off. We'll use Nancy Pelosi's press releases about January 6th, which is essentially what the January 6th report is, a partisan anti-Trump document designed to make it harder for him to win election. It's a purely political document. And the cacophony of anti-Trump vitriol in the media and their analysis is an excuse to try to keep him off the ballot. In my view, these were officials, both the state court officials in Colorado and the Secretary of State. It was in their respective jurisdictions a seizure of power. Powers they're not able to exercise under state, federal law or the Constitution. And, if there's any insurrection going on, it's that effort to make America into a one-party state by keeping the top opponent of the incumbent off the ballot.
Now, Tom, I follow you on Twitter, and I always see your videos, and I enjoy them thoroughly. And very rarely do I see your temperature go above 100 degrees. But I just saw a post that you were calling out the deep state DOJ for going after you on social media. Can you tell us what sort of effort the federal government has had in going after you for telling the truth?
Yeah, I mean, we've blown the whistle and have been critical of these abuses of Trump, specifically on the documents case, where they made up the law as they went along to try to throw him in jail, and they're currently trying to do so. And, for our troubles, it looks to me like I was subpoenaed by the grand jury. They had the FBI show up at my door, and it led to a grand jury appearance as a witness that had me harassed for hours on end over really, in theory, I mean, not in theory, in reality, silly questions about what I ate at the White House, what my tweets were about,
wow.
And other things like that. I remember thinking, why am I being questioned about First Amendment activity? And not only questioned, but questioned as if I was like in some sort of nightmarish MSNBC show arguing with a bunch of leftists about Donald Trump. It was crazy town.
This sounds very, I hate to use the term, but Gestapo-esque, to just show up on your door and ask you unrelated questions on a fishing expedition. That's what it sounds like to me, Tom.
It sure did. It sure was.
Wow.
They could have asked me a series of questions if they were doing a serious investigation, and it would have been over in 10 or 15 minutes, right?
Wow.
But
I got to tell you.
Hours.
I got to tell you, Tom, I've never seen anything like it. I greatly appreciate what you do. Unfortunately, at the end of the interview, we're up against a hard break, but thank you for what you're doing. I know you're taking people off of the voter rolls, ineligible voters in D.C. and elsewhere. You're fighting the good fight. How can we help out getting out the word and support your efforts at Judicial Watch?
Well, spread the word via social media. We're all over social media, Judicial Watch, and obviously me on Twitter and such. And then go to our website at judicialwatch.org. That's where the core documents are, the documents we're uncovering, and support us, too. I mean, we're a charity, and, anyone who wants to support us can and should.
All right, very good, my friend. Happy New Year to you. Great to have you on the air again. It really was a blessing to have you back on. Best of luck to you, and I hope to have you on again soon, Tom Fitton.
I'm here. Thank you very much, Rob. Appreciate the coverage.